Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Education and Skills Corporate Delivery Committee meeting, Wednesday the 20th of September at 4 o'clock. Welcome everyone online and welcome to everyone in the room. It's lovely to be back actually in a room and seeing people, isn't it? So can we, looking at the agenda, please have any apologies for absence first?
I've had no apologies as yet, Chair.
Can we have agenda item number 2, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests? None. And then we move on to agenda item number 3. And if we can look at them first, please, page by page, and then I will approve and sign them as a true record of the meeting if you are content. So page number 1, page number 2, and page number 3. Can we have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Lyndon. That's lovely. My one comment on the meetings was to thank Sarah, really, as we move forward from the minutes when we made the request for you to look at the items that you did such a great job of providing so much detail on. And we move to agenda item number 4, where we consider the report, really. So my one comment before we start, I think it would be remiss not to mention the Eston report, the Education Director's Eston report, which was excellent. I think it started in June. I think I'm right to say anyway, Director and Cabinet Member, that the report is now on the Eston website. So I'd urge you all to have a look at that and to click through. And I'm not going to embarrass the Director and the team, really, and the Cabinet Member, but I will mention the mention by Eston of constructive and open relationships at every level, strong and effective culture of educational improvement. And remarkably, I think, inspections for Swansea schools were the strongest in Wales in the 3 years leading up to COVID in March 2020. That is something, isn't it? And that we see above or well above average, including for our vulnerable children who are categorised under free school meals. So that is notable achievement indeed. Of course, there's no room for complacency, but that is very, very good to note for Helen, Cabinet Member Robert Smith, Councillor Robert Smith, and of course everyone else involved with education in Swansea schools. Robert?
Yeah, can I thank you, Chair, for those remarks, and also can I put on record my thanks to this committee for the part that it's played since I became Cabinet Member, and indeed before that, in the previous administration. I think the role of the PDC and the CDCs as they are now has been pivotal in putting Swansea where it is in terms of education policy moving forward, and I think that's a tribute to all the members of this committee. So thank you very much, and it's a tribute to you as well, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to keep looking at you, Gareth, just in case I miss hands going up, right? But so sorry, Lyndon. I was looking at the screen and not looking in the room. That's fine. Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Yeah, I was only going to say that totally agree with the points that the Councillor Robert Smith made, and I was very pleased as well that the scrutiny panel played a really good and positive part as a critical friend, and I mean friend in that, because I think that is important, that we're all working to get the same outcome, and that the scrutiny panel had a good write-up in that report as well, and it was constructive, but gosh, it was quite a bit of work. I know going before the panel, and I know I certainly had an hour and a half before them. So, but I have sent a note to Helen as director to pass on my certainly thanks to the whole education team for the great job that they did, because that didn't just happen.
Thank you, Lyndon. No, it doesn't just happen. We know what hard work, dedication and commitment goes on all day, every day. My second preliminary point really is to thank Councillor Fiona Gordon for sending forward her 2016 Scrutiny Committee report on school governance, a very challenging role. How can the council ensure school governors provide effective challenge for their schools? So that has been distributed to all committee members, and I'd ask you to park it, to read it at your leisure, because we will be looking at these issues. So that's essential background reading as we go forward. So thank you very much, Fiona. It's really, really helpful and is a very interesting read. Okay, so on that point, I think we can move, if there's no other comments at this juncture, on to agenda item number 4. And the purpose of the report is to present additional education contextual information for the committee for the draft programme for 2022-2023. It's really important that we're not going to pull this apart. I mean, and that keeping that line between the forward-thinking policy development and delivery ethos of this committee is very separate from the work of scrutiny. So this information is foundational for our work as we go. This is the springboard, if you like, that we move on from. And I thank Sarah, as I say, for the great detail in this report. Can I ask Sarah, would you highlight, is there anything you would like to highlight as we go? I know it's for information, but is there anything in particular for Sarah or for Rodri that you would like to highlight, or of course for Helen as the director in the report, as we then head towards opening it up for the committee for any questions or insights? Nothing?
Thank you, Chair. I think just to mention really about the importance that we put on strengthening of our school leaders, and I think, as you said, not to sort of rest on our laurels post Eston. If anything, as you say, Eston is now a springboard for us to think, right, where do we go next? And I think it came out in the Eston inspection that we're doing well on the development of our school leaders, but it's where we take that next. So I think the information that Sarah shared in there, it gives you the good contextual information, both nationally, regionally, and locally, of how we're looking to move that forward and build on what we've done to date. So I know nationally there's an overall programme that's been developed further. Then obviously regionally, working with Partneriaeth, our plan there is now with Partneriaeth in its relative infancy, is that we have that strong relationship with Partneriaeth, with us working with them and our schools, in ensuring that our schools get what they need from our regional partners, and we've been ensuring that we broker that. But also, what was probably one of our main strengths that is showed in the Eston inspection is how we help each other, how our experienced leaders in our schools are making themselves available then to support either newer heads or schools that need that additional support. So I think it's that collective approach, both nationally, regionally, and locally, that I point out. Yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you, Rodri. Helen, online.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to echo some of Rodri's comments, really, in section 3 of the report, the bulk of it is about how we support the professional development of our leaders. But we must remember that we, as Rodri said and you said, we can't rest on our laurels. We have to grow our own, and we have to find a way of ensuring that the profession of being a leader in one of our schools in Swansea still as attractive now as it was 10 years ago. And obviously some of the statistics in the report point to the fact that surveys conducted by professional associations, as one example, suggest that there's less appetite to stay on after becoming an assistant head or a deputy head to actually go into that role of being a head teacher in a school. So the quality of our head teachers in Swansea is high. We know this, but it's a job to maintain it, and that's one of the key policy commitments, really, in terms of maintaining that leadership going forward. So it's not done without support and intervention, and that spread of good knowledge across the system, that true system leadership from our heads supporting each other, is something that we would wish to maintain. But obviously the job of a head teacher is not just about maintaining standards and improving standards in schools. It is very much an amalgam of different roles. And the challenge really of undertaking that role when sometimes they are faced with social work, sometimes with police work, sometimes with all kinds of hats on, they still have to maintain that leadership kind of level of standard within their role. So it's furnishing them really with a local offer. So that local offer in Swansea is something we're very keen to develop, to ensure that we complement the regional activities, because a lot of the regional activities are pre-planned at a national level. So there are many national programmes to develop the continuum of leadership, from being a leader, for example, a teaching assistant, being a higher level teaching assistant, all the way across the continuum up to very experienced head teacher leadership. So there's all types of leaderships in our schools. But the key point to remember is that our local offer will complement partneriaeth's work, and it's very much ensuring that our new and acting heads have that training to enable them to undertake the other roles that I mentioned. You know, the
Sorry,
difficult-
Helen.
Yeah.
Sorry, Helen. Can I ask you to go back like 20 seconds, because you had a technical glitch, then you froze for a second. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. So I was trying to emphasize the importance really of our local offer, our local training offer, very much complementing the work of our region in partneriaeth, and ensuring that our local offer is something that we develop. So I very much see and welcome really the input of this committee in developing our approach to strengthening our new and acting head teacher support by providing a Swansea standard really of how we induct people into the role, how we have a handbook, something concrete really, a product really that has the Swansea stamp on it, to ensure that we continue really to have that high quality, high calibre leadership in our schools. So it's about the different roles that people undertake, ensuring that they are trained on health and safety matters, procurement matters, all kinds of issues that they have to learn along the journey of being a leader. So we're very much you know, in that development stage with our handbook, but it's something that we would wish to have potentially as a clear kind of policy and strategy in Swansea going forward.
Cabinet Member Robert Smith, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think that's what I want to echo, because I think this report, and it's an excellent summary of the professional development opportunities that are available to school leaders and school leaders at different levels. I'll come back to that. But I think the key question for us here and for the committee moving forward, I think, is, you know, where do we go from here? We know we have capacity within the system in Swansea. That's clear from this report. We have the national and regional professional development programs, and it's how we harness all of those to develop a system-wide approach in Swansea moving forward. What are the needs? How do we respond to that? And how we make sure consistency across the board, so that, as Helen said, new appointees and also people that have been in post a long time, but that they are able to access that support, that opportunity for peer challenge, for peer reflection. It's all part of effective school systems. And what I'd emphasize as well is, yes, senior leadership within schools is absolutely crucial, but then there's also that middle leadership tier that has to be put right. And we know in studies of effective school improvement initiatives, that middle leadership, the curriculum leaders, the head of year, head of department, whether it's primary school or secondary school, that needs to be strengthened, and ongoing opportunities there as well. So I think that needs to be part of the focus of a policy moving forward and a system moving forward in Swansea as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert. Can I go on to Councillor Fiona Gordon next, please?
Oh, thanks. Okay. Yeah, thanks. It's following on that theme really of leadership at all levels and different types of leaders. And I just wondered whether, Helen, you have a comment on the recruitment and retention of ALN coordinators, you know, given the extra pressures and responsibilities now sort of handed down to schools and them having to make sort of the first decisions in terms of ALN. yeah, the increased workload and so on, and navigating new systems and new laws. Is there an issue there? Is that something we need to keep our eye on, really?
Thanks. It's a very important question. And for Swansea's ALN coordinators, we have a very good package of workforce development. So we feel that that the bar has risen, obviously, because of the demands that have followed the new Act for ALN. But certainly we've responded to that challenge well. So we've given the ALN coordinators greater status. We've afforded a lot of professional learning in Swansea. And indeed, you know, the role of an ALNco in a school is almost at a senior level, a senior leadership team level. So we've given them that status by affording them a lot of professional learning. And in many cases, we've seen schools prioritise their resources to ensure there is non-contact time for those important roles of leadership. So I think we are tackling that issue pretty well in Swansea currently. And I think the training offer, when Estin came to inspect us in June, they said we were ahead of the game of many other local authorities, really, in providing that training offer to additional learning needs coordinators.
Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Helen. Do you have any other comments, Lyndon?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think as Robert mentioned, that it's not just the head, it really is the whole school team, right down to the caretaker, really, and that's really is part of the ethos for that school. And I think it's really important. And the governors, obviously, and I haven't read the paper that you'd sent around, actually, Fiona, but the role of governors as well, they have a part to play as again a critical friend but a supporter of the management team. The other thing is, it's really important that the head nowadays develops those links where they can with business in their area, so that the school responds to their needs. Because for children in any school, really, it's about a journey. When they start school through to work and so on, and the better they do in school and the more enjoyment they get out of that, the better they'll respond to that. So I think I say that link with business, we can't second guess that. So I think that needs to be part of that role as well.
Thank you, Lyndon. Can I go to Councillor Mike White? Sorry, Mike, I didn't see your hand going up then.
Okay, I thought you weren't friends with me. Right, what can I say? It's very encouraging in the report, because we're looking at programs of sustainable community learning program, and reducing the carbon footprint of that. And the reports from 223 onto 221. Can I just ask, what type of planning program have we got in place? Because we're going out to schools now to ask for an audit of the conditions of the school and that. But have you got any idea of what type of program we're looking at to take this forward? Because as I say, if we are to encourage, our own ground, as you say, Helen, of quality teachers and professionals, I think it's all about as well, of the teaching the children, that they are learning in good working environments as well. I think that's paramount as well, to just encourage the type of staff that we're actually looking for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Helen?
Yes, I think our capital programme is addressing the backlog maintenance issues. Obviously, we have a proportion of condition A and B condition schools in Swansea that we'd very much like to see increase. Obviously, the number of old buildings we have doesn't always help us in that respect. But the conditions, obviously, and the maintenance required to remedy some of those conditions in terms of backlog maintenance is, being dealt with as part of our capital works with our schools. Obviously, we do try and tackle the worst conditions first. So our focus is very much on condition C schools, where you can see the numbers there clearly outlined in the report. So we do try and tackle those as quickly as possible within the available funding, and we have a programme really to look at those maintenance issues and the remedial work that's required as well.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, but as I say, Chair, I think it is encouraging that there is, a system that we have got in place to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Mike. I think one of the things that came out of this report for me, I was in a school. I was in school a long time ago. My children were in a school quite some time ago. It was Cumbulla Primary School, and we had Cumbulla Primary School and Mansildon Primary School, old Victorian buildings, and we did have plaster falling off the walls and all that sort of stuff. What came from this report is that we spent 37, I think I've got it right somewhere, £37 million in the last 10 years on improvements and maintenance and capital programme work. So I'll find it now, Robert. I saw your face then. I've just noted it down there. And the capital programme itself is hundreds of millions that we've seen invested over that same period. So we haven't got those huge challenges. I suppose that's the lowest category schools issues that we had. Drained water coming up through the floors in Gosain and all this awfulness. A lot of those big issues have been dealt with, and it's good to hear that we've got the proactive capital programme, which is ongoing as well. Robert, did you have your hand
just
up,
on that, obviously there's the building of new schools, and that's very important, and I've provided new schools in many areas, but let's not underestimate the importance of the capital maintenance programme as well, in fulfilling our ambition for better quality buildings across the city and county. But what I wanted to bring up, Chair, was in terms of this report, I think it's how we move this forward and how we develop a policy that's going to address and strengthen school leadership, as I said, at all levels across Swansea, that we have a system-wide approach. And I think it's for the committee then to decide, well, what it feels it needs. But looking at an end product, I think that kind of a Swansea approach to school leadership across the board is going to be a beneficial outcome of this inquiry moving forward. And I think that could be a focus for the committee in the next 2 or 3 meetings. It'd be a very worthwhile objective, because we're in a different ball game now with the end of Aero. We're into a new relationship with Partneriaeth, and I think there's strengths here within Swansea that we can replicate across the whole of the county. And I think, to be honest, we could become a beacon of good practice if we get this right. And I think that's something we need to look at.
Thank you very much, Robert. Whose hand? Helen Morgarese's hand is up, I think, there. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Councillor Dirks. Just to come back in on Councillor Lyndon Jones's comments in relation to the importance of governors. It's very much something that we would wish to reset in terms of our ambition of how we support governors in Swansea. We want to create a new vision, really, in the absence of governance training and support, given nationally. I think in other parts of Wales, other consortia, their support for governors is led by consortia. But for us in Swansea, it's very much our responsibility. And it's something that we probably haven't focused enough on during the pandemic years. And we would very much wish to reignite and reset really our ambition of how we support governors. One of the things that we've undertaken recently is meeting with chairs of governors. We want to have a good programme of termly meetings with them. We want to explore avenues such as having consultative governors that we can use to draw experience from and use across our schools in Swansea. So there are a number of innovative ways that we can improve the support for school governance, and certainly that connectivity between governors in different schools is something that we can't underestimate, because sometimes governance issues in schools can become quite difficult and taxing for individual governors. And I think the ability to share and connect with other governors having similar difficulties and to learn from experiences is something that would be valuable going forward.
Thank you very much, Helen. Really, really interesting and insightful for me. When I mentioned the £37 million, I was referring to 2.2 excuse me, to on page 6, and it was investment in the context of capital maintenance in relation to carbon efficiency. And that was a clear, strong thrust coming through here. This is incredible, I think, improvement, and it's great to see. Looking at the school in the round, it has come from, in my notes, comes through really, really very strongly in the comments that have been offered in the committee, and comes from very strongly in the report as well. And we've got the Welsh Government, we've got Swansea Council and the Education Directorate, and we've got 94 schools. And one of the things that it would be interesting to see coming through here is who's responsible for what. Councillor Gordon said, look, we've had new law, and then who's responsible for what in making sure this law is implemented effectively and efficiently. So that's an interesting one, I think, to come through here in the school leadership context, balanced with people, skilled, qualified, experienced teachers who are saying, I don't want to get to the top level, even though they're capable of it. Now, whatever the block is there preventing people from going on and progressing their career as we want them to, we really have to try to remove that. And I've said to Helen a number of times, I know in meetings and in private, about a bonfire of bureaucracy. And you know, if we've got essential bureaucracy that we can't live without, and we all go to prison if we don't toe the line with, fair enough, that's essential, we have to do it. But have we generated bureaucracy? Have we generated any cholesterol over time in Wales, in Swansea, in our schools that we could get rid of? Can we free up the staff? Can we enthuse the staff? Because they entered education for their love of children and their love of education. They prove their worth and their skills and abilities, and they say, that's not for me. So something's wrong there, it seems to me. I'm not saying that in a negative way, because I think it's in this report, clearly is in the report from national reports and what we've heard locally. So I think that's very interesting. I love this idea that the director mentioned growing our own. You know, at some of the great successes we've seen in every part of Wales and the UK of people whose potential was explored and developed from primary school onwards. So can we plant more seeds in young minds to look at education as a potential future career path? We know we've got some heads in Swansea who went to the schools that they are the heads of now. Now that is blinking success, if I've ever heard it. So can we do more of that? And as the cabinet member says, absolutely rightly, this committee is about forward-thinking policy development. So as we go forward, I won't mention now in the work plan, but I think there are some sensible and meaningful suggestions for us to prioritise what we're going to do in the year ahead as well. The idea in here of professional learning and leadership, absolutely critically important, but it needs to be balanced with this focus on community-driven leadership and those community links, which are really important, as Lyndon Jones says, in looking at the school in the round. And I think that's quite an interesting area, using the links that we've got around the schools not being islands in their communities, to take the pressure off, not to add to it, but to take it off. The communities are assets for the schools, and the schools are assets for our communities. I think that is an interesting area that I get a sense of as we come through this. So that's it from me on the report. Do we have any hands up in the room? Anybody else want to offer a comment on the report before we move forward? No? Anyone else online? Helen?
Thank you, Councillor Dirk. Sorry to hog the mic, so to speak, but there's one element of leadership development that we need to consider in the face of the current challenges that we face as a nation, as a council, in terms of the economic crisis, and inevitably the resources we've got in our schools around being able to manage budgets is going to become more challenging in future years. So I think that's the same across the board, you know, across Wales. So what we need to think of potentially is how we work in partnership across schools more to pool resources and to have economies of scale to ensure that we make the most of the resources we've got. And instead of employing, you know, different roles in different schools, that we consider how we can jointly appoint and pool resources to make the money go further. So I think leadership and leading a partnership is a key element that we should consider given the challenge we face economically.
Thank you, Helen. I think it was, Bev, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in a previous meeting, Councillor Hopkins mentioned the great work that's done at a cluster level, and what a powerful platform that is for considering improvements at every level, you know, with school leadership and with governance and anything else you might want to look at. And I think in that context, would that fit into your comment there, Helen, making better use of the existing clusters maybe as we go forward?
Definitely. I think some clusters do it better than others, and it's about spreading really the good practice of how clusters have tackled some of the difficult resourcing issues and have genuinely worked in partnership. You know, sometimes you get this superficial partnership, but genuine partnership work is a different kind of leadership. And it means that people genuinely look at their budgets, genuinely look at the resources available, and try and find a way of economising really, in terms of appointing staff, for example.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Bev Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm only speaking on a personal level because the schools I'm involved in work really well as a cluster with a comprehensive school, and they have done for quite a while. It works very efficiently. They share expertise. A lot of the leadership and support staff from Pentre Harbour will come down into the primaries and home in on different things like maths and English to try and raise levels before the children go there. So I think working together is a really fantastic thing. It's not going to work for everybody, obviously, because different schools want different things. But as I say, speaking on a personal level, it does work in our cluster.
That's great. Thank you very much, Bev. Councillor Mike White.
Yes, can I just endorse what Bev says? Obviously, within the schools that we represent in our ward, and there are some schools within Councillor Gordon's ward, within Castle, but we through the comp, you have sort of regular meet. I know our heads and senior management team go down to the comp and take leadership meetings, you know, that everybody there, you know, around the table there to take part and to put the ideas forward. But it's also that we have a transition 2 weeks from our year 6 into year 7. So that gives the children that's going to go to our local schools a really good insight of what is going to happen when they move over to comprehensive, and that puts a lot of confidence not only into the children but into the parents as well, you know, and that'll work well for many years.
Thank you, Mike. I'll do my best here. Look, I don't think I've missed anyone yet. I'm doing quite well.
No, sure. And I just want to come back in terms
Yes,
of moving this forward. And I don't know whether there is any mileage, because I don't want to take school leaders out of school, to be honest. But how do we capture their views on what's going on at the moment, the quality of the existing provision, and get some constructive criticism of what's delivered at the moment as a means of us being able to identify what reforms are needed, if any. I mean, you know, it might be perfect as it is, and also to get a handle on the numbers coming through that are accessing some of the existing provision, and that those I think are things we need to information we need for future meetings.
Sorry, Robert, do you mean you don't want to distract school leaders from their core task by burdening them with getting involved with us? Or good? That's really interesting. One of my other notes here was to do with the idea of surveying and getting information from the front line, warts and all information, and that is of critical importance. I know in Councillor Gordon's report previously, there were some sensitivities in there, but you addressed them, and we've got to look at the reality of the situation. Rodri?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Pleased to say something we've started looking about as we were planning for this academic year. It was something that we've challenged ourselves to do, really, is to improve the opportunities for our head teachers and the wider workforce, but also as wide as parents and our learners as well, for us to have that honest conversation with them. And I think where we are lucky in Swansea is that we do have those professional conversations often with our heads. They're not shy about coming forward and challenging us in a professional way, but it's important that all heads have that opportunity. So I agree with the cabinet member that will be a good form of getting a solid evidence base for us to build the policies that are going to be going forward from this group then.
Excellent, thank you, Rodri. Councillor Jones, Lyndon?
Sorry. Yeah, it could be that we ask, heads, everybody, and you're doing interviews, what do you think you do well and what do you think you do not so well? And to just be honest about it and put those into the frame and not to criticize, but then we know where we need to spend the time on development and so on. So that might be a thought, and that can be done quite easily. It could be in the form, as you say, Chair, a survey to come back. In the past, we've had people come here. It could be via Teams now, so they don't have to actually leave the school. And it could be just 10 minutes even, to give a quick conversation. But I think so we could have that contact in that way as well.
Through you, Chair, could I ask, Rodri, in terms of
Well,
the existing evidence base, what can we draw on, and when are we likely to have any evidence moving forward?
There's parts of education that have been doing it regularly for a long time. So if you look at colleagues in additional learning needs, for example, they annually survey our schools to collect information on what's working well, what's not working so well, what we can improve on. And we also do it with our service level agreements with our schools, the annual survey on all service level agreements to find out are they happy with services they get from legal, HR, etc., etc. So it's building upon that and not wanting to be in a position where there's a survey every month going. It's pulling those surveys together to get that quality information. So I'd say I wouldn't say it's going to be anything short term in the next few months. We are planning more towards the end of this academic year, but if the committee wants to look at that soon, I got no issue with that at all. We're also collecting sort of that personal face-to-face information as well. I've started since I started enrolled as a head of service. I'm now conducting at least one, if not two, visits to our schools, where it's that informal type visit where they go have that conversation with their teacher. And I swear Councillor Jones might have been a fly on the wall, because my last question before I leave is, what are we doing well for you and what can we improve on? And sort of we're starting to paint a picture from those visits. But the most pleasurable part of it, I'm asking the same questions to the children and young people as well, as in, what can the council / the school do better for you, and what are we doing well? And what you get from the children and young people is an honest answer. There's no filter with that answer. And to date, touch wood, there's been very positive responses as well.
Thank you, Rodri. I think there's in my mind a separate service level agreements. Okay, you've got a technical contract with the council to do whatever it does, but when we come to the heads, I mean, we want to reassure them that this isn't going anywhere other than in a positive, forward-thinking direction for Swansea education. This is not going to be on some sort of appraisal. It's not going to be, oh, did you hear what she said? Oh my goodness, couldn't believe she was critical. No, this is challenging intelligently the education system as it stands in Swansea today, with the earnest intent of making things better. And my question, I wrote down here, how radical can we be? And that's the thing, because the money, we're not going to be awash with cash later this year, in the next 3 years. We know that. We know there's pressures coming down the line. And I think for us, it's about giving our brilliant school leaders the opportunity to see how, given all the challenges, the economic climate that the director refers to, all those challenges, how we can be do everything in our power to make sure that we're fit for purpose to cope with all those complexities as we plan a way forward. So that would be fascinating. But I think the end of the academic year, Rodri, and I'm conscious of not putting pressure on you and Helen and all the team, but looking when we go to the next agenda item, we're looking at the work programme, we want to be looking at school leadership issues much earlier than the next year, really. Any other comments? Mike White, Councillor White?
Yeah, Rodri, you picked up on service level agreements. Sometimes it's a bit thorny with schools because obviously the schools want value for money and every penny counts. And I know that there has been a few issues within IT and getting perhaps some support there. But how often do you ask the schools for feedback on the arrangements you got with the service level agreements? Is it half termly or termly?
I think it's annually on that one, but I think the IT one is more regular than that. I believe IT report termly on the number of calls open for schools and whether they've been closed and how they've been responded to. So.
Yeah, I think the issue is trying to get, when they've got a technical problem with the service, is again obviously getting somebody to fix the problem, really. As you know, schools are 100 miles an hour and most of the things are done with IT today. But it does sometimes cast a bit of doubt in are the schools getting the service and the value for money. But I just wondered how often those sort of services were being asked of the information of the schools.
Mm-hmm. There's also an opportunity via our education digital board. So that's a board chaired by myself, where we have a representative of our IT corporate team, but also representatives of schools. So there's that forum once a month as well to have those discussions. And I know IT colleagues, like a number of other areas in the council, have been struggling with staff retention and losing staff. So it's about having those professional conversations and being honest with our schools, being honest of where we are on the ability to deliver. And one thing we have delivered in that area, obviously, is via the Welsh Government's Hub Infrastructure Programme, is a massive influx of new devices into our schools. If we think 20,000 new additional devices into our schools are 20,000 more that need IT support, where the IT support is probably the same or slightly less people-wise than it was before we added those 20,000 in there. And obviously a new Wi-Fi infrastructure as well, which brings training needs both centrally and in schools. But totally take the point, it's important that we keep having those conversations with our schools and that we work as a broker, really, as an education department with our colleagues in IT to ensure that the schools get the timely responses that they need.
Thank you, Rodri. Thank you, Mike. Before I ask the director to come back in, it seems to me when this report was put together, we asked for additional detail about catering, cleaning, etc., the staff in that context. And as part of the school leadership approach, we of course be looking at all aspects of the educational challenge, and that's got to be about freeing up resources to go to the front line to benefit the children. So there's what I see in this is a business development / management opportunity to consider the options of where we are and where we could possibly go forward in future as part of that school leadership question that's going to be asked there. Helen?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in terms of that school leadership question, I mean, it'd be interesting to explore what the questions might be, because obviously the purpose of this committee is to focus on policy development and policy delivery. So I think we need to have an eye and a focus on what the end product will look like. So if we are to use surveys to underpin and to support our planning of this work, I think we need to understand exactly what the work is, where we're aiming for and what we're trying to achieve.
Lovely, thank you, Helen. Relating one question to what Councillor White flagged up there, and we're not going to talk about detail, of course, but the issue would be, for example, for school leaders, are service level agreements value for money? You know, is the money being best spent in the best way for the best service? And if it's not, why are we doing it? That would be one area that we could ask a question of. And as you say, could be perfect, no issues, wonderful, great. Or there could be alternate ways that we could think about what we do and how we do it. And that's an opportunity for us to consider in the process, perhaps. Do we have other comments? Questions? Okay.
Would it be in order then, Chair, if,
Go on, Robert.
if the officers and myself come back with a verbal update on these issues at the next meeting, and then perhaps we can focus the next stages on from going on from there, Chair?
Yeah, that would be really helpful, I think.
Okay, so put that on the agenda as a verbal
Yeah,
update.
yeah, for October, a verbal update. And when we started, just before we started, a few committee members said, apologise for asking me questions and sending me emails. Can I say, no, if you've got any questions at all, anytime, just email and ask the question. Nothing's wasted. And in that, like, if there are questions after we go, the power of reflection is really important sometimes, isn't it? You know, you leave the meeting, you think, oh gosh, I could have asked that, or I could have made this. And there's nothing wrong with you emailing those questions or asking those questions to me, and I can feed them on then to the cabinet member, and they could be considered in that way. There's nothing wrong with us doing that. So please feel free to do it. Councillor Gordon.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just thinking about where how we ask leaders what's working and what's not working. As somebody's mentioned, we just don't want to create extra work and big, long, detailed surveys that take up people's time. I think if we are asking, we need to keep it simple and straightforward, and we also need to consider what we're going to do with the results of that. You know, because if we ask, then we've got to act on it. So just to bear that in mind.
Come back to
Yeah.
the next meeting and also draw on existing evidence as far as possible, what's been collected at the moment and how we can use that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is that okay, Fiona? Yeah, thank you, Robert. Councillor Joy.
There are plenty of avenues, and I'm sure, you know, the officers know this. There are plenty of avenues where the head teachers would meet collectively and senior leaders, and maybe that's an opportunity where, rather than them taking their time up filling surveys and so on, an agenda item on one of those meetings might be a way forward to save them some time, but to get the answers that you need quickly.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, no hands up, no one indicating. Okay, well, thank you all very much for that. That was really, really interesting and full and detailed. So if we move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 5, and that's the work plan. We've had a number of discussions about the work plan, and there's a few amendments that I'd like to suggest. So for the meeting planned for the 26th of October, I think it would make sense, based on the report and discussions, for us to focus on strengthening school leadership, and also to do that then in November as well, because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of detail there, along with the verbal update from Cabinet Member Robert Smith and Helen Morgan-Rees as Director, if that's okay. Can I ask you just to jump in, if you put your hand up, and Gareth will notice if you want to say anything as I go through this proposal. So then that's October, November, we're looking at school leadership. Then in December, that we take away the reference in the draft here to the Policy Development Committee report to Cabinet 21st of July update. Now this logically, Councillor Jones, I'm thinking of you here, this logically sits with scrutiny. It would be something perhaps that could be passed to scrutiny. And that instead in December we have a look at inclusion and attendance policy, and then we bump that into the meeting for the 25th of January as well, given the breadth and scope of that huge area too. That would then take us up to the 15th of February, and there we turn to school governance. And again, I'd suggest that we do the same thing with school governance, so we bump that into February and March meetings. And then hopefully, and I'm conscious of how much work we are talking about here. This is a lot of ground to be covered. By the time we come to April or thereabouts, perhaps we could be in a position to see 3 policies hopefully coming forward. So can I ask for comments about that as an amended work programme? Fiona, thank you, Fiona, for Lyndon. Yeah, okay. Okay, thanks everyone. Can I ask particularly from Helen's point of view and Cabinet Member Robert Smith, does it seem a sensible, structured approach?
Yeah, we can work around that.
That's great. That's good. And Helen?
Yes, it follows on from the July meeting, I think, where you discussed other matters such as attendance and inclusion. Obviously, we've discussed leadership and governance here today, so it makes sense to space some of those items out across the what remains of the year.
That's excellent. Thanks, Helen. And as a choke, sorry, excuse me. Oh, there we are. Yes, can I ask Robert, do you think it'll be okay for the next meeting for us to have a verbal update? Will that would be, I'm conscious of timing and
Yeah, I think we can give a verbal update on what evidence exists, what evidence has been collected, and then what are the gaps and where we need to move forward and engage hopefully with existing surveys, with existing meetings, existing structures, and try and capture it that way, because as I said, we don't want to add to anyone's workload. But then again, for us to get a clear picture, we've got to know what's going on the ground and what people genuinely feel. So I think that's something that we have to get that balance right.
That's lovely. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, committee. So heads nodding in the room as you spoke. So are we content? We are, aren't we? Yes. There's a nod of the head from the director as well, which is always a bonus. So I'm conscious of making you frown sometimes, Helen, because I am like a squeaky hinge and I don't mean to be. So on that point, I think that we've completed our agenda. That brings work plan agenda item number 5 to a close. Our next meeting is planned for Wednesday, the 26th of October at 4 p.m. And unless anyone else has got anything to add, on that point, I'll close the meeting. Thank you all very much for your attendance.